What is happening, all my haunted followers? I hope all is well. I would like to say again hello to all my new subscribers. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe down at the bottom. I post creepy stories every week. Next, I'm looking for Encounter with the Cryptids. Bigfoot, one of the most famous cryptids of them all. Here are 5 stories of encounters with this mysterious beast that still eludes us all to this day. Enjoy. Sometimes, you wish you never discovered something, or find out something is true, because everything you believe in goes right out the door, and I can't say that enough about this story. This happened to me several months ago. Part of my job is to go to locations before the lot is sold, and ensure the location is good for excavating. I have always worked alone. Now, the location of the story was a good distance in the woods, as it was going to be a new ranger station. Sometimes, I'll camp out at the location, typically because it's going to be a long day. Luckily for me, this location, although a good distance, was accessible for my truck, so I was able to take it out there. It was around 6 p.m. or so, and it just started getting dusk. I had finished up the day, laser grading the location. Now, I've been out in the woods a lot, and you see a lot of wildlife. You would hear a good amount. As I was putting away my equipment, I heard several knocks on the trees. I would say maybe a mile or so away. I didn't pay much attention to it, thinking maybe it was loggers or campers. But the knocks came again, more rapid this time. The odd thing was, from where the knocks came from, a mile in another location, I heard the same knocks. It wasn't an echo. These knocks were coming in front of me, and in the back of me. And every time the knocks would come, the knocks from behind me would answer back. I'm no expert, but I am almost positive it was something or someone trying to communicate. Again, thinking it was nothing more than campers, I started officially packing up the truck. That's when I heard what I can only describe as grunting. And the strange thing was, back in 2013, I went on an expedition, so to speak, and we got to see gorillas in the wild, and how they behave. A chill went up my spine because I automatically connected to what I was hearing to the sounds of gorillas. Now, when we got close to them, they grunted like this because they were territorial. And it was actually frightening as hell to see these things up close. So, thinking, maybe it's just local people messing with me. I get that from time to time. Some people think I work for the lumber business and surveying land for cutting. I've ran into protesters before, and they can get violent. At this point, it was getting dark, and I decided I would just sleep in the truck until early morning. So I lay down on the back and started watching Netflix, when something hard hits the side of my truck. I quickly jump up and grab my firearm. I open my door and peer into the dark night. I look and I see nothing. So I look on the side of my truck, and there's a good-sized stick. Probably about as tall as me and weighed a good amount. It didn't fall. It was like it was thrown by something. I tried my best to shrug it off, but that's when I noticed something. Eyes. In the tree line about 20 feet away from me. The moon was very bright that night, and whatever the moon was reflecting off of was absolutely massive. Now, I am no super believer in much, but Bigfoot has always interested me, and my mind jumps right to that. Bigfoot. But then I start thinking, okay, it must be a costume. So I yell, "Hey, nice costume!" But then, this thing, which I thought had already been standing, stands up. I nearly fall backwards. It was in no doubt standing 10 to 11 feet tall, and about the size of my truck. I was in shock. Then, this very low growl came from this thing. I couldn't move or think straight, so I did the only thing I could think of. I spoke to it. Please. I'm not here to hurt you or your home, I promise. Just leave me alone, I'll leave. That's when it turned around and started walking away. At that point, I figured my time and those words were up. I got into my truck, and I sped away. I ended up lying to the contractor and telling them that the location was far too rocky for excavating, that it would be impossible to build anything on, and they bought it. I still don't know what I saw, but I can most certainly say I think I saw Bigfoot. I'm sure everyone has heard about Bigfoot, heard stories of encounters, seen videos and pictures. But have you ever heard of one speaking? Well, so to speak. No pun intended. I'm an avid Bigfoot hunter. Not like I want to harm him, but rather gather evidence to the scientific community to prove that these cryptids are real. Hey, by the way, I love your videos. Please do more cryptids. Anyways, this happened to me several months ago. My team, well, so-called team, set out for an adventure. Now, there is some science to this, and then there is us just trying to capture some evidence, like knocking on trees. We believe in Bigfoots. Yes, that was plural, as I fully believe there are more than just one. They communicate through some forms of Morse code, maybe by taking sticks and slamming them against trees. We like to mimic these sounds by doing the same, and we can usually get a good response. That night, unfortunately, was just myself and my brother Dave. We got to our typical location and set up our recording devices, as these are not your normal recording devices. These are military-grade recording devices that have the ability to record up to 2 miles away. We also use these night vision cameras and thermal cameras. So we were just sitting there, and I attempted a Bigfoot call. This is more of a yelp that we believe is another form of communication. Just then, we picked up an answer back. I would say that about a mile or so away. Yes, it was answering back, we thought. Now, typically, we don't ever split up, but we figured we had to cover more ground, as it was just the two of us, and having the only one really good recorder, I left the good one with David, hoping to have my own experience. So I found a place to sit down, and I began making calls. We had walkie-talkies to communicate with each other, so I would let him know when I was making the call so he didn't think it was a Bigfoot. And all of a sudden, I heard a very low voice, beyond the lowest voice I've ever heard. It made me jump, but thinking it was Dave, I turned around to confront him. Yet, it wasn't David. Standing more than 10 feet away from me was Bigfoot. Your run-of-the-mill looking Bigfoot. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do or say. I was just frozen. So I went to pick up my radio to radio David, and this thing just stood off and ran away so quickly. I mean, it ran through the woods with absolute ease, and it didn't even make a sound. David then radioed me saying that he was going to do some calls. I could barely speak. I just said, "Get to my location now." Without hesitation, Dave made his way to my location, and I was barely able to even come up with a sentence. All I could say was, "Bigfoot said hello." David, of course, thought I was just making it all up, but he saw the shock and terror in my face and knew I wasn't lying. Bigfoot actually spoke to me. To this day, I have never had an experience like that. I wish I said something, or I could see it again. I know, so many will say, "Why didn't you have your camera on you? Or recorder?" This was just a rookie mistake on my part, and I promise you all, I won't next time. Or maybe that's why Bigfoot actually said hello. Maybe he knew I wasn't recording him. Maybe he just wants to be left alone. Have you ever had something happen to you, and no matter how long it's been, you still don't believe it happened? Well, I can tell you that I've heard many Bigfoot stories, watched countless videos, seen pictures, yet nothing compares to what happened to me. Well, at least the stories I have read that painted Bigfoot as a timid creature, but the one I experienced seemed far more dangerous than you could ever imagine. This happened to me in the summer of 1997. This was before all the smartphones and the crazy technology we have now, where a camping trip meant camping and not recording every second of your life. Maybe I'm an old timer, but to be honest, I wish I had the phone I have now back then because my story would paint a better picture. Back in 1997, my friend and I would spend almost every day fishing and camping in the woods. We had a lot of time on our hands before college, so we wanted to live it up. Maybe instead of partying and just drinking our lives away, we wanted to clear our minds. It was a weekend, and I remember it being Saturday afternoon. We had gone to this pond maybe 100 times before, but that afternoon, something just seemed off. The force was off. Coming from someone who's nearly spent his entire childhood in the woods, when the woods are quiet, something is off. I can't explain the feeling. It was just like the whole woods had vanished. We shook off the feeling, set up our tents, and soon after started to fish. Nightfall came rather quickly, as it does when you're out, away from the busyness of the world. We caught ourselves two nice fish and began to cook them up. The pond is no more than 18 feet away from us. All of a sudden, we heard a big splash. I knew it was a rock because the sound of it breaking the water and then the resubmerging of the water. At first, we just thought it had been a branch or something, but again, several seconds later, boom! Another big splash. So we stood up and looked around. We couldn't see anything. About 30 to 40 feet away from us was this cliff that stood 60 or so feet high. We shined our flashlights in that location. As our lights really couldn't see anything, all of a sudden we saw a rock flying through the air and hit the water about 20 feet away from us. I'm not entirely sure if this thing was trying to hit us, but it was definitely trying to get our attention. That's when my friend Bill caught sight of something. Standing at the top of a cliff was this figure. This was a very clear summer night, but we could only make out a shadow-like figure. But from our vantage point, this ungodly thing must have been standing 8 to 9 feet tall, easily, and had the body of a bodybuilder. Then again, we see this thing pick up another rock and throw it at us, this time coming down on one of our tents. Our first reaction is to yell until I turned around and I had seen what the rock was throwing. It was no rock, it was a boulder. Again, this thing came about to my waist and must have weighed somewhere around 300 pounds. No man I know could pick up a rock that size. A chill went up my spine at that very moment. It was the only plausible explanation to us, but we never thought one of them would become so hostile. We started to pack up our stuff when we heard something come through the woods. Something big. So we grabbed what we could and started running for the truck. I looked back to see this massive looking ape-like creature, bigger than I've ever guessed, without a doubt standing 10 feet tall, all hairy and just as massive build. We stopped, jumped into the bushes, and watched as this thing tore apart our camping gear, like ripping through a piece of paper. As I was distracted, we both booked ass to the truck, got into it, and peeled out of there. We never went back to that location. Years later, and even to this day, it's difficult to talk about. Why was this thing so hostile? And I imagine if we got a hold of one of us, my little 9mm would have done nothing. Whoever spends their life searching for these things, just a little warning, don't piss it off. You never think that you would be part of a story like this one. You read about it, see it on TV, but never truly think you could possibly have a story to tell. This happened to myself and my dog in the summer of 2015. A lot of the camping grounds that we typically frequent had closed down. So I decided that I would find my own location. New Hampshire was something that came right to my mind. Living in a busy city life, I find camping at the top of my ways just to get away from everything. No cell phone, no laptops, just myself, Ranger, and the outdoors. It was early September. I find that this is the best time, as summer is slowly coming to an end, and it's not horribly hot, as New England weather usually is. I was just planning for a weekend getaway, and that would serve my need to camp. I found a perfect location and headed up there on a Friday night. The drive itself was just amazing. I had parked my car on the side of the road, gathered my gear, and made my way into the woods with Ranger, tagging right behind me. I was looking to travel a good distance while keep track of my location. I found a perfect little spot, just right by the river. Picture this beautiful flowing river, the sounds of the birds, and just you and your best friend. I quickly set up my tent and set up a nice little fire and began to fish. With my surprise, I had caught something no more than 5 minutes of fishing. So I put this nice catfish I had just caught into my cooler and cast it out for another one. This was about 6 p.m., or maybe a little 7, as it was starting to get dark. All of a sudden, Ranger started to fur up and growl, looking into the woods across the river. At first, I didn't see anything, thinking Ranger had caught sight of a moose or something. But that's when I noticed something moving in the tree line. At first, it definitely looked like it was the size of a moose or something, so I just shrugged it off. Then something caught my attention again. This thing was standing bipedal and just staring at me and Ranger. I couldn't believe the size of this thing. If I had to make a guess, it was standing 10 feet or taller, weighing somewhere around 300 to 400 pounds. It was furry, with human-like features. I saw it kneel down and take a sip of water from the river, so human-like. Then it splashed some water over its head, all while never taking its eyes off of me. At that moment of being freaked out, I felt as if it wasn't there to harm me, so I just minded my own business. So I just went back to fishing. As I was just doing this thing stood up and just walked away. Now, I know a lot of people in this situation would grab a phone or just run out of there, but I have the most up respect for nature, so I just did my own thing. That night, I went to bed rather quickly as I was planning a day hike. It was around 2 a.m. or so. I heard something outside the tent. Again, Ranger started to growl. As I hushed him, that's when I heard whatever it was walk away. I knew whatever was walking was heavy because I could literally hear the footsteps. The next morning, I awoke. There was something laying no more than 10 feet away from my tent. 2 fishes and some berries. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I looked around and saw these giant footprints. Definitely your common Bigfoot footprints. That day hike went on without a hitch, and I ended up leaving that day, never seeing my friend again. Did I really make friends with Bigfoot? You may not share my story, as it's a short one, but I'm telling you, it's good, and this really happened to me. Back 2 summers ago, me and my girlfriend went on our birthday getaway to West Virginia on a camping weekend. We spent most of our Saturday morning to late afternoon hiking and just taking in the amazing sights. We set up our camp around 6 p.m., made up a small campfire, and started to cook some deer meat that I had brought with us. Just around 7 or 8 o'clock, as it had gotten dark, we heard something rustling through the trees, right in front of us. Thinking it was nothing more than a deer, we went back to enjoying our dinner. That's when my girlfriend Chelsea grabbed my leg and said, "Evan, look, look." At about 20 or so feet away from us was a baby Bigfoot. And it was without a doubt small, about 3 to 4 feet tall, and it was just there looking at us. Then, out of nowhere comes, well, I can only assume its mother. It picks up the baby, groans, and just walks away. We both just sat there in absolute awe. We couldn't believe what we had just seen. To this day, anytime I tell this story to someone, they never believe me or just think I'm making it up. But I'm not. This really happened. Thanks for sharing. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed those stories. It blows my mind. I love these stories. Thank you for sharing. Everyone who shared these stories, I greatly appreciate it. Bigfoot has always been kind of a sensitive subject for me, because for me, there's such a huge amount of sightings of this creature, yet there's just a lack of evidence. And I said this before in another video. There's such little evidence. As much as we think we have, it's not really evidence. We have pictures, we have videos, but they're always grainy. They're always just horrible pictures. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The only way we're going to prove that these creatures exist, so we need a carcass, we need a body. And that's the reality of it. You can go have your own experience, share your stories with other people, but they're not going to believe you until you have actual evidence. There's a team, I forgot what the team's name is. They supposedly have DNA evidence of this creature, yet every evidence that went through it's been shaky. The scientists like, well, we really know it could have been this and this and that, but never really saying it's of an unknown creature. But for me, I think Bigfoot, without a doubt, was a pinnacle of cryptozoology in itself, because everyone said I had my own personal experience with some type of creature, but Bigfoot, I think, was the start of it. So, guys, I hope that you enjoyed those stories. I loved them. I am not saying they're fake at all. I wish I had my own experience with Bigfoot. That's the one thing that I want to be able to experience in my life, is to have my own experience with a Bigfoot. Because for me, it's seeing is believing. Not to say these stories aren't real. You guys had some amazing experiences in these stories. I love them. Guys, again, looking for cryptid stories next. Send those stories into alex@uni101@gmail.com. Your experience with, I don't care if it's a skinwalker, a werewolf, a wendigo, some random weird creature, send them in. That's going to be my next video. Guys, if you haven't done so yet, please like and subscribe down at the bottom. And happy hauntings.